I absolutely love the 1911 pistol, and I'm going to give you 5 reasons why. Spoiler alert, capacity, not one of them. Love it. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. Today's video is going to be the top 5 things that I love about the 1911 pistol. 1911 is one of my favorite guns, possibly my favorite pistol of all time, and there's plenty of reasons for that. This thing just has a ton of history. Initially adopted by the United States military in 1911, John Moses Browning's classic design is over 100 years old and still relevant today. But before we get into it, I want to thank everyone that's liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined Patreon, clicked on my Amazon affiliate links, supported the channel in any way that you guys have. I really, really appreciate you guys. Number 5, aesthetics. This is just a beautiful gun. So the first of the top 5 things that I truly love about the 1911 is just the styling of it. This pistol, compared to something like this, modern polymer frame, striker fired gun, this just screams class. It is a beautiful gun. And whether you choose, the original kind of 1911 A1 style or the more upgraded, newer style with the beaver tail and the skeletonized trigger and hammer, your ambidextrous controls, stuff like that. 1911 just looks fantastic. It's an all-metal gun, which it just feels more solid than a polymer frame gun. That's all there is to it. And it just looks beautiful. Anybody that denies that a 1911 is possibly the best looking pistol you can get is just flat out wrong. Number 4, ergonomics. It just feels great. The next thing, number 4, is going to be ergonomics. There's just something about the grip angle of a 1911. When you compare it with something like a Glock, which is probably the most popular pistol in the country, the 1911 has a much more vertical grip angle. And so you don't have to lock your wrist out. And to me, it's just more pointable, shootable, easier to get back on target after each shot, and easier to get back on target for your first shot. The ergonomics of this gun are just great. It's heavy, and that's a good thing. That helps control the recoil of the 45 ACP cartridge. And while 1911s are chambered in a variety of calibers these days, the most common one is 45, which you can see the difference there between that and a 9mm. Old, fat, and slow, that's what people think of this, but it's been an effective cartridge for over 100 years. And the 1911, that's what it's generally chambered in. And so you need that weight to help mitigate that recoil, and the thing just feels good. When you present a 1911, it goes onto target naturally every single time. The ergonomics of this pistol are just absolutely perfect in my opinion. Number 3, modularity. You can literally change out anything on a 1911. So number 3 is going to be modularity. Now, generally when you think of modular and guns, you think of something like the AR-15, where you can literally switch out any part and upgrade anything you want to on it and really make it your own. Well, 1911s can be the same way. So this right here, this is Springfield Mil-Spec 1911, and it is styled very much after the original 1911 A1 from 100 years ago. You see something right here. This is the TRP operator, also from Springfield. And they're based on the same frame, slide, and barrel. But there's a big difference between the two of these. And that's the thing about the 1911. The original idea of a drop-in part in firearms was derived from the 1911, from the military trials, where they had multiple contracts and they had to make sure that all the parts would interchange between other pistols. So what they did was they took 2 guns from each contractor, dropped the parts in a big bin, and then put 10 guns back together, and if it worked, then it worked. And so that's where the concept of a drop-in part for a gun was born, was with the 1911. And the cool thing about that is you can take a very basic gun like this and change out literally anything you want and make it into a gun like this or something totally different and have it styled any way you want. You could change it up to make it shoot better, fit better, and look better for you very, very easily. And you can buy parts from a multitude of manufacturers, and theoretically, they should all work. Number 2, accuracy. This thing will shoot lights out. With the combination of the heavy weight due to the all steel construction, the long sight radius, and the single stage trigger, it's hard to miss with a 1911. So, number 2 is going to be accuracy. Now, I've got guns with red dots on them. I've got very accurate pistols and rifles. But there's just something about the 1911, and it has to do with some of the things I've already talked about. The ergonomics, the all-metal heavy construction of it. But these things just make you feel like a better shooter than you really are. It is very easy to hit steel with the 1911, even at greater ranges than you probably could with something like this. And there's reasons for that. It's just a really good design. John Moses Browning, over 100 years ago, designed a real winner of a handgun. And just about every handgun since then has taken some design components from the 1911 because of how well it works. But the thing about this gun is that it is just accurate. It is easy to put shots on target, more so than any other pistols that I've shot. 1911s just make you feel like you're a very good shooter. And part of it, again, is that all-metal construction. That weight really soaks up recoil. Generally, at least with a government model like this, with a 5-inch barrel, you have a nice long sight radius. So that helps you quite a bit too. The grip angle, everything about it just makes it really, really easy to shoot one of these accurately. And so it makes you feel very, very confident with it. And confidence is important. You want to be able to feel like when you present and start firing off shots, that they're going to hit where you intend them to. That's extremely important. Now, part of what makes the 1911 so accurate, maybe one of the main things, is the single action only trigger. And that is one of the most beautiful things about this gun. This trigger doesn't have to cock a striker, it doesn't have to cock a hammer, it doesn't have to do anything except for drop the hammer and fire the shot. The slide reciprocating does everything else as far as recocking the gun for the next shot. And so because of that, you generally get a very light trigger with hardly any take up, no creep, no grit, breaks like glass, extremely short reset, back to the wall, breaks like glass again. And with any quality 1911, you should get a very good trigger like that. Same thing here, no take up, right at the wall, extremely crisp break, short reset, crisp break. The trigger on a 1911 is possibly the best thing about it. it just feels so good, and you have so little opportunity to pull your shot because your brake, you're right at the wall immediately, and it's such a light, crisp brake that you really have no opportunity to pull your shot. And the trigger, along with whatever sighting system you're using, are the two things that give you your accuracy. And so part of what gives the 1911 its legendary accuracy is the legendary single action trigger. And number one, reliability. As long as you're running good magazines, I recommend Wilson Combat. You shouldn't have any reliability problems. Runs perfect. And my number one, and this might be a little bit controversial, is going to be reliability. I know that people think that 1911s are inherently not reliable compared to modern, polymer pistols, but my experience has been the exact opposite. And I feel like that all comes down to a couple things. For one, make sure that you buy a quality 1911. If you're going to try to go with one that's a little bit less costly, still get something like this. This is a Springfield, but it was only $700 because, it doesn't have all the fancy upgrades and features, but it still has the same forged steel frame and slide, the same match grade stainless steel barrel, and this thing has been 100% reliable for me, and I can't say that about any of my other pistols. Even my M&P has had one malfunction, whereas my 1911 has not. And I've had this gun for a long time. I've put tons of rounds through it, and it's been 100% reliable. So anyone that says a 1911 isn't reliable, it's probably they either bought a cheap one that wasn't put together well, made out of metal injection molded parts, or they're using the wrong magazines. I recommend Wilson Combat magazines. They are really good, and I'm going to show you why. So in the whole theory of you get what you pay for, when it comes to 1911s, the number one thing that makes them unreliable is going to be magazines. And this is why. So you can see right here the follower in the magazine. Now this is the original one that came with my Springfield. And the thing about it is the way that the follower is designed, and this one has been 100% reliable, but these Wilson Combat mags, these followers are designed kind of like an AR-15 anti-tilt follower. And so the round is going to come up into your pistol, into the action at the same angle every single time. And that's what's going to give you your reliability. Because the only thing that makes a 1911 unreliable ever has to do with the feed ramp and getting those rounds to seat every time correctly. But if you have a magazine that puts your rounds in at the right angle, you will not have a problem with that. So spend a little bit more money, get good, reliable magazines, and you'll have a very reliable gun. Now, my honorable mention is going to be the history behind the 1911. It has a long and storied history. True proponents of this pistol design will talk about how it won 2 world wars. It's been in service with the United States military in one way or another for over 100 years. And in fact, was the military designated sidearm until the 1980s. But it's still been used ever since then in specific branches, and, operators have been using the 1911 even since then. And that's where something like this comes in. This TRP operator right here, that's literally what the design of this was for. It won a contract for a specific group of military personnel that still wanted to run the 1911 because of what a great design it is. And that's the thing. This thing has been, it's a classic, and it's a legend. And I'm not going to go into all the history in this video because it's been done 100 times. But it just, it makes you feel like you're holding something real with a 1911 compared to a lot of modern guns. And the history behind them really is unparalleled among almost all guns. And I'm talking about things, I've got AKs and ARs behind me, which have an amazing history on their own, but none of them quite like the 1911 does. So that's definitely worth talking about, but it was hard to fit it in my very top 5 reasons why I love it, because the history doesn't quite have as much to do with how the gun shoots as the other 5 things that I mentioned. So please like, share, comment, subscribe, join my Patreon. I've got a link down below. I'm also going to have an Amazon affiliate link where you can shop for 1911 accessories, grips, triggers, beaver tails, safeties, because you can change out any part you like to on these guns. So check that link out. If you click on that, anything you buy within the next 24 hours gives the channel a little kickback, helps pay for things like new guns, ammunition, everything else that we need to make this channel keep running, and it's greatly appreciated. From Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.